The 2026 Iran war erupted on February 28, 2026, following a surprise joint military operation by the United States and Israel that fundamentally reshaped the geopolitical landscape of West Asia. Known by the United States as Operation Epic Fury and by Israel as Operation Roaring Lion, the conflict began with a massive aerial campaign targeting the highest levels of Iranian leadership and military infrastructure. These strikes were launched while indirect nuclear negotiations were ongoing in Muscat, Oman, where mediators had just reported a potential breakthrough toward peace. The opening hours of the war saw the assassination of Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, after his compound in Tehran was struck by Israeli missiles. This act, coupled with the deaths of other high-ranking officials such as Minister of Defense Aziz Nasserzadeh and IRGC Commander Mohammad Pakpour, plunged the Iranian government into immediate crisis. The prelude to the hostilities was defined by a period of extreme internal and external pressure on the Islamic Republic. In late 2025 and early 2026, Iran faced its largest nationwide anti-government protests since the 1979 revolution, driven by a collapsing economy and a severe currency crisis. The Iranian government responded with a violent crackdown that resulted in thousands of deaths, including a period in January 2026 described as a series of massacres. U.S. President Donald Trump responded to these events by ordering the largest military buildup in the Middle East since the 2003 invasion of Iraq, deploying multiple aircraft carrier strike groups, including the USS Abraham Lincoln and the USS Gerald R. Ford, to the region. While the Trump administration cited an imminent threat and the need to prevent Iran from obtaining nuclear weapons as rationales for the war, critics and international observers have frequently characterized the campaign as an illegal act of aggression aimed at forced regime change. Iran's military response, codenamed Operation True Promise 4, was swift and aimed at disrupting both regional stability and global trade. Iranian forces launched hundreds of ballistic missiles and drones at targets in Israel, specifically hitting Tel Aviv, Haifa, and the area surrounding the Damana nuclear facility. Furthermore, Iran extended its strikes to U.S. military installations and allied nations throughout the Persian Gulf, including Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates. One of the most significant strategic moves made by Iran was the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, a vital maritime choke point through which a significant portion of the world's oil passes. Iran formalized a toll booth regime in the strait, demanding that any passing oil shipments be paid for in Chinese yuan, further complicating international trade. The human cost of the conflict has been staggering, with casualties spanning multiple nations and involving both military personnel and civilians. In Iran, reports on the death toll vary significantly. While the Iranian Health Ministry reported over 2,000 deaths, independent human rights organizations like Hengna estimated that more than 7,300 people had been killed by early April 2026. A particularly tragic incident occurred on the first day of the war when the Shajare Tayyibeh girls' elementary school in Manab was struck by a U.S. Tomahawk missile, killing at least 175 people, mostly children. The United States military also suffered losses, with at least 15 soldiers killed in various incidents, including a drone attack on a base in Kuwait and the crash of a KC-135 refueling aircraft in Iraq. Israel reported 39 deaths, including 27 civilians, many of whom were killed by Iranian cluster munitions that struck residential areas in cities like Ramat Gan and Beit Shemesh. The war also triggered a significant regional escalation in Lebanon, resulting in the 2026 Lebanon War. Following the killing of Khamenei, Hezbollah began firing volleys of rockets into northern Israel, leading to an Israeli ground invasion of southern Lebanon intended to establish a security layer. This secondary front resulted in over 1,500 deaths in Lebanon and the displacement of approximately 1 million people, roughly one-sixth of the country's population. In Yemen, the Houthi movement eventually joined the conflict on March 28, launching ballistic missiles toward southern Israel and threatening to blockade the Bab el-Mandab Strait in support of Iran. Economically, the 2026 Iran war caused what analysts described as the world's largest supply disruption since the 1970s energy crisis. Oil prices surged past $100 per barrel, leading to widespread fuel shortages and inflationary pressures across the globe. The disruption of the Strait of Hormuz also threatened global food security by halting the shipment of essential fertilizers and liquefied natural gas. The military costs were equally immense, with the U.S. Pentagon requesting $200 billion in additional funding just 3 weeks into the conflict to cover the cost of munitions and operations. Damage to U.S. bases in the region was estimated at $800 million, with many facilities rendered all but uninhabitable by Iranian missile strikes. Internationally, the war sparked intense legal and diplomatic debates. Numerous international law experts and the UN Special Rapporteur on Human Rights characterized the U.S.-Israeli strikes as a violation of the UN Charter, noting that the preemptive justification lacked evidence of an imminent Iranian attack. Cultural heritage sites were not spared, as UNESCO reported damage to World Heritage Sites in Iran, including the Golestan Palace and historic structures in Isfahan, such as the Shah Mosque. Within the United States, public opinion was deeply divided. While many Republicans supported the action, a majority of voters in some polls opposed military intervention, and the country saw the largest civilian protests in its history on March 28, 2026. Following the death of Ali Khamenei, Iran underwent a rapid and tense leadership transition. An interim leadership council was established on March 1st, and by March 8th, the supreme leader's son, Mojtaba Khamenei, was elected to succeed his father. Despite the change in leadership, the new supreme leader maintained a hardline stance, vowing to keep the Strait of Hormuz closed to pressure the United States. However, as the conflict entered its 6th week and the U.S. threatened to destroy Iran's entire power and water infrastructure, diplomatic efforts led by Pakistan and China finally gained traction. On April 7, 2026, President Trump announced that the United States and Iran had agreed to a temporary 2-week ceasefire. This agreement, mediated by Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, was based on a 10-point proposal that included the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. While the ceasefire provided a brief respite from the violence, both nations indicated it was only a temporary pause rather than a permanent cessation of hostilities. As of early April 2026, the situation remains volatile, with the underlying causes of the conflict, ranging from nuclear proliferation to regional hegemony, left largely unresolved.